Didn't they know my life was already off the rails the day I met the Caldwell brothers? Back then, I still believed in simple things, like effort leading somewhere, like family meaning safety, like love being something you slowly walked into instead of falling through a trapdoor. My name is Elena Moore, and this is one of those stories people assume is exaggerated, or fictional, or cleaned up for sympathy. It isn't. If anything, the truth was quieter, colder, and a lot more humiliating than the dramatic version people like to imagine. I grew up with Lily Moore, who everyone thought was my cousin, my best friend, sometimes my shadow. We shared clothes, secrets, even the same beat-up desk in our bedroom growing up. What no one bothered to tell us until much later was that only one of us was actually wanted. Lily was the real daughter. I was the substitute. We didn't know that then. We just knew money was always tight, voices were always tense, and love always felt conditional, like something that could be taken back if we messed up. So when the offer came, dressed up as an opportunity, we didn't question it. We should have. The Caldwells didn't show up themselves. People like them rarely do. Instead, there were lawyers, contracts, polite smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. All we were told was that we'd be taken care of, that our family debts would disappear, that we'd live somewhere safe, elegant, quiet. Quiet so scared us. It didn't. That's how Lily and I ended up in a black car heading north, holding hands so tightly my fingers went numb, staring out at a city that looked like it belonged to people who had never worried about choosing between rent and groceries. The Caldwell estate sat behind iron gates and trimmed hedges that looked almost unreal, like they'd been edited for a movie. Everything smelled clean and expensive and detached. The kind of place where sound don't echo because nothing is allowed to be loud. That's where we met Nathan Caldwell. Nathan was the older brother. He didn't smile when we were introduced. He just looked at us like he was assessing damage after a storm, calm, distant, already calculating repairs. He had this way of standing still that somehow felt heavier than movement, like the air around him answered to him. Beside him was Julian Caldwell, younger, restless, charming in a way that felt practiced. He smiled too easily, leaned too close, spoke like he already knew you. The kind of man who made you feel chosen and unsettled at the same time. We didn't understand the roles then. We learned. The first few weeks felt almost gentle. We were given rooms, clothes, freedom within invisible boundaries. No one locked doors, no one raised voices. But everything we did was noticed, documented in glances and pauses that said more than words ever could. Lily was paired with Julian. He was assigned to Nathan. Assigned is the right word. Not chosen. Not courted. Just blessed. Nathan never touched me at first. He didn't need to. His control lived in routine. In how meals appeared when he expected them, in how cars waited without being called, in how he knew where he'd been without ever asking. He spoke softly. Always softly. Which somehow made everything feel louder. Eat, when he'd barely touched my plate. Sleep, when my eyes were already heavy. Stay, when I hesitated near the door. He never said please. He never had to. Julian, on the other hand, was chaos wrapped in laughter. Lily gravitated toward him because he felt the laugh. He joked, teased, pretended none of this mattered. Until it did. Until his mood shifted, his smile sharpened, and the house felt smaller around her. At night, Lily and I would curl up together like we used to as kids, whispering under the covers like we could somehow sneak our old life back in. We're just temporary, they say. They'll get bored, they answer. We were wrong in different ways. The term we learned later was kept. Not wives. Not girlfriends. Kept. It's a strange thing, realizing your comfort is built on obedience. That the kindness you receive isn't free, it's prepaid, and the bill comes due whether you acknowledge it or not. He tried to stay invisible. Nathan didn't like questions. He didn't like resistance. What he liked was order, and I fit into his life like furniture, something placed carefully and never moved without reason. Sometimes, though, I'd catch him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. Not with desire, exactly. More like concern mixed with ownership, the way someone watches something valuable they don't fully trust the world with. That look scared me more than anger would have. Everything changed the night Lily came into my room shaking. They're bringing her back, she whispered, eyes wide, hands cold. Who? Julian's, the girl. The one he loved before. The words hit like ice water. In our world, there was nothing more dangerous than a past love. They always known we were placeholders, but hearing it out loud made it real in a way that hollowed Lily out from the inside. She didn't cry. Lily never cried when she was scared. She just went quiet, which was worse. That was the first time she said it. We need to leave. The idea felt absurd. Impossible. But once she said it, it grew roots. We started planning in whispers, in stolen minutes, in fake arguments staged just loudly enough to seem convincing. We learned the house's rhythms. We memorized security shifts. We pretended normal while mapping exits in our heads. Nathan noticed. Of course he did. One evening, as I was packing a small bag I never intended him to see, he appeared in the doorway like they'd always been there. "You're restless," he said. My heart nearly stopped. "I just can't sleep." He stepped closer, not touching, never touching, but the space closed anyway. "You don't like uncertainty," he continued, voice calm, almost gentle. "Neither do I." For a moment, I thought about telling him. About confessing everything, begging, bargaining. But something in his eyes told me it wouldn't matter. Control doesn't panic. It tightens. The night we chose to run, Lily squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. "Promise me," she said, "no matter what happens, don't let them separate us." He promised. He didn't know how expensive that promise would be. We made it out of the house. That alone felt like a miracle. The city lights blurred past us as we ran, laughing and crying at the same time, adrenaline burning through fear. For a brief, beautiful moment, I thought we'd won. Then I saw the black car waiting at the airport curb. Nathan was standing beside it, coat perfectly buttoned, expression unreadable, like they simply stepped outside to retrieve something misplaced. His eyes found mine immediately. And in that instant, I understood something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. This wasn't about death. This wasn't about obligation. This was about possession. And I had just tried to escape it. Nathan didn't raise his voice at the airport. That's the detail that still haunts me. No shouting, no grabbing, no dramatic confrontation like they expect in a movie. He used his hand lifting slightly, two fingers moving, and suddenly security personnel they never noticed before were everywhere, polite but immovable, already steering Lily and me away from the crowd like we were late for a flight they never booked. Julian showed up seconds later, bracelets, irritated, eyes blazing when they landed on Lily. "So this is what you've been planning," he said, half laughing, half angry, like she'd played a joke that went too far. Lily didn't answer. She just stood there, shoulders squared, jaw tight, refusing to look at him. He felt her fingers shaking in mine. Nathan finally spoke, low and controlled. "Elena," he said, like my name was a question. "Why?" He wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him he didn't get to ask that he didn't own the explanation just because he owned everything else. But the truth slipped out instead, raw and humiliating. "Because we're tired of being kept," I said. For the first time, his expression changed. Not anger. Not shock. Something quieter, sharper. Like disappointment mixed with something dangerously close to hurt. "We're going home," he said simply. The car ride back was silent in the worst possible way. Julian kept tapping his fingers against his knee, tension radiating off him in waves. Lily stared out the window like she could will the city to disappear. Nathan sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body, far enough that it felt deliberate. When we reached the estate, everything looked exactly the same as it always had. Perfect. Untouched. Like nothing bad ever happened there. That's how you know you're trapped. The world doesn't change. Judo. They separated us immediately. Not violently. Not cruelly. Just efficiently. Julian took Lily upstairs, murmuring reassurances that sounded like apologies dressed up as affection. I tried to follow, panic flooding my chest, but Nathan's hand closed around my wrist, firm, unyielding. "C'est safe," he said. "You need to calm down." I promised her, I said, voice breaking. "You don't get to do this." He looked at me for a long moment, then released my wrist. "You misunderstand," he said. "I get to do exactly this." That was the night the illusion finally shattered. Nathan didn't lock me in my room. He didn't threaten me. He didn't even raise his voice. He just stayed. Sitting across from me in the quiet, watching as I unraveled under the weight of everything I hadn't said out loud before. "I don't have a past love," he said eventually, like he was correcting a mistake on a spreadsheet. He laughed. He couldn't help it. It came out broken, hysterical. That's not comforting. It should be, he replied. He stood up, passing. You don't understand what it's like to feel disposable. Don't know you're temporary. His gaze followed me calmly. You're not temporary. You don't get to decide that, I snapped. He stood then, closing the distance slowly, carefully, like he was approaching something fragile instead of furious. I already did, he said. That was when fear curled into something colder inside me. Because possession without cruelty is harder to fight. There is no clear villain. No obvious escape. The next morning, Lily was gone. Not missing. Not disappeared. Used, gone. Julian informed me over breakfast, casual like he was discussing weather. Sis being moved. For her own good. He dropped my fork. Where? That's not your concern. He stood so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. You don't get to decide that either. Julian smiled, sharp and humorless. Funny how you keep saying that. That's when Nathan intervened. She stays, he said. Julian scoffed. You're being soft. Nathan's eyes hardened. I'm being precise. He didn't understand it then, but that was the moment the brothers stopped pretending they were on the same side. Hours passed. No word from Lily. My chest felt like it was caving in on itself. Every terrible possibility ran through my head until I couldn't breathe. That night, Nathan found me sitting on the floor of my room, knees pulled to my chest, staring at nothing. Sis not leaving the city, he said quietly. He looked up at him, eyes burning. I want to see her. He hesitated. Used a second. Barely noticeable. Not yet. That was when I made my decision. If you let her go, I said, voice shaking but steady, ella stay. He froze. I won't run, I continued. I won't fight you. I won't even ask questions anymore. Ella be whatever you need me to be. Used, don't cage her. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. You sacrifice yourself for her, he said finally. Sis my family. Something dark and complicated flickered across his face. And what am I to you? He swallowed. You're the man who can make this stop. He turned away, jaw tight. For the first time, I saw cracks in the control. Not enough to free me. Enough to hurt him. Lily left 2 days later. No goodbyes. No dramatic farewell. Used a note slipped under my door in familiar handwriting. I'm alive. I'm free. I'm sorry. He didn't cry until hours later, when the house went quiet and there was no one left to be strong for. After that, everything shifted. Nathan became different. Not kinder. Not colder. More attentive, more present, like he was trying to fill a space that had been carved out and left bleeding. He started talking to me. Really talking. About work, about pressure, about the loneliness of being responsible for things that could ruin lives if you dropped them. You don't know what it's like, he said once, late at night, voice low. To have everyone assume you're heartless because it's easier than imagining the weight. He wanted to hate him. He tried. But empathy has a way of sneaking in when you least want it. Weeks passed. Months. The house felt less like a prison and more like a complicated compromise. I wasn't free, but I wasn't invisible anymore either. Then the proposal came. It wasn't romantic. No flowers, no grand gestures. Just Nathan standing in the living room, hands in his pockets, eyes serious. I want to marry you, he said. He laughed. Then I realized he wasn't joking. You don't love me, I said. Yes, he replied calmly, I do. The word landed wrong. Heavy. Misplaced. You want to legitimize ownership, I said. That's not the same thing. He didn't deny it. It can be both. He said no. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Used, no. That was when the truth finally started bleeding through the cracks. He found the documents by accident. Old contracts. Records. Letters I was never meant to read. There was no debt agreement. No transaction tied to my name. Nathan had gone to my parents years ago, not to buy me, but to ask for permission. To do things properly. They'd taken the money anyway and rewritten the story. He wasn't sold. He was stolen. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. I thought you knew, he said quietly. He laughed again, bitter this time. I thought I was nothing. Something in his face broke then, completely. I never saw you that way, he said. I just didn't know how to give you freedom without losing you. The irony nearly crushed me. All this time, he'd been running from a cage that was built on fear, not malice. That didn't excuse it. But it changed everything. I spent the night alone, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment through a new lens. Every look. Every silence. Every choice. By morning, I knew one thing for sure. He couldn't go back to being kept. And I couldn't pretend I hadn't started to care. That was the beginning of the end. Or maybe, the end of the beginning. The strange thing about truth is that it don't arrive like a lightning strike. It sits in quiet. Uncomfortable. It rearranges memories you thought were settled and turns them into questions you're not sure you're ready to answer. After that night, after I learned I hadn't been sold but abandoned in a far more deliberate way, the house felt different. The walls were the same, the routines unchanged, but something inside me had shifted. He wasn't a bird in a cage anymore. He was someone who had stayed. And staying, I realized, was a choice too. Nathan didn't push. For the first time since he'd known him, he gave me space that wasn't performative. He didn't appear at my door unannounced. He didn't ask where I was going or what I was thinking. He watched from a distance, like someone learning how to hold something without closing their fist. That restraint mattered more than any apology could have. Days passed. 10 weeks. He started leaving the estate on my own, small trips at first, then longer ones. Coffee shops. Bookstores. Places where no one knew my name or what I represented. Every time I came back, part of me expected the rules to snap shut again. They didn't. One evening, I found Nathan in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, cooking badly. Something simple, something human. He looked up when I walked in, almost startled. I didn't know if you'd be back tonight, he said. The words didn't a question. They were an admission. I didn't know either, I replied. We ate in silence, but it wasn't the heavy kind anymore. It was thoughtful. Careful. Like two people standing on opposite ends of a bridge that had never been tested. I spoke to Julian, Nathan said eventually. He is stiff in it. About Lily? Yes. He paused, choosing his words. There was never a woman coming back. No past lover. Julian invented it. He thought fear would keep her close. The confirmation hit harder than I expected. Anger flared, sharp and immediate, followed by something sadder. Pity. Did he regret it? He asked. Nathan exhaled slowly. He lost her. That was his consequence. A week later, Lily came back. Not Trav. Not summoned. She walked through the gates on her own, hair shorter, eyes clearer, carrying herself like someone who had learned how to breathe again. He ran to her before anyone could stop me. We collided in the driveway, laughing and crying at the same time, holding on like we might disappear if we let go. You look different, I said, pulling back to really see her. So do you, she replied, smiling softly. Julian stayed back, watching us with an expression he'd never seen on him before. Not arrogance. Not charm. Something humble. Uncertain. I was wrong, he said to Lily. About everything. She studied him for a long moment. I know, she said. That's why I left. They didn't fix things instantly. They didn't fall into each other's arms like a movie ending. They talked. They argued. They rebuilt something slower, more honest, or at least tried to. Watching them made something click inside me. Love wasn't about possession. It wasn't about fear. It was about risk. That night, I found Nathan standing on the balcony, the city lights spread out beneath him like a living thing. I'm not staying because I owe you, I said, stepping beside him. It didn't turn. I wouldn't accept that. I'm staying because I want to, I continued. But that means things change. He nodded once. I know. No control, I said. No invisible walls. No decisions made for me. His jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. And if I leave one day, I added quietly, you have to let me. That finally made him look at me. If you leave, he said, boy steady but raw underneath, it will be because you chose to. Not because you were pushed. I believe him. We didn't they get married right away. We didn't they need to. We dated like normal people, awkward and tentative, learning each other without contracts hanging over our heads. The day he proposed again, it wasn't they in a mansion or behind locked gates. It was in a small restaurant we both liked, one we they argued about the best dessert in more than once. I'm not asking to keep you, he said, holding out the ring with a hand that wasn't they perfectly steady. I'm asking if you'll walk with me. He said yes. Not because he was powerful. Not because he was safe. But because he finally understood that love isn't they something you trap. It's something you offer and risk losing every day. Years later, people still ask me what it was like to live that kind of life. To be surrounded by wealth, control, intensity. They expect glamour or trauma or both. What I tell them is this. The most dangerous prisons aren't they built with locks. They're built with fear, silence, and the belief that you don't deserve more. And the bravest thing you can do isn't they running away. Sometimes, it's staying long enough to demand change, and strong enough to walk if it never comes. Lily and I still talk about that night sometimes, about the airport, the black car, the moment everything could have gone differently. We laugh now, but there is always a pause afterward, a shared understanding of how close we came to losing ourselves. If you're listening to this and any part of it feels familiar, if you've ever mistaken control for care, or silence for safety, I hope you remember this. You are not temporary. You are not owned. And love that costs you your voice is not love at all. Thank you for staying with me through this story, all the way to the end. If it moved you, confused you, or made you angry, I want to hear about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments, share your perspective, tell me what you would have done in my place. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with them. See you in the next one.